All right, we're back with another episode of OFP. Here again with Scott from Why I'm Anti-War, and had him on to talk about borders last time, and then got off on the anti-war ty-
Yeah, yeah,
talk,
yeah.
like I do a lot of the time, no matter what I'm talking about, especially with other vets.
I
And
mean, that's the
yeah,
number
we
one issue.
right, and like halfway through, we were like, why didn't we talk about this the first time we sat down to talk and stuff? So
Yeah.
we decided to get back on as soon as we could and get more into that and your story especially.
Yeah. Well,
But
thanks for
but
having
first,
me
how
again.
yeah, how have you been?
Pretty good, pretty good. I just trying to wrap up a sort of nightmare of night classes I'm taking, but otherwise things are good. Just leaning into missed out on Childerberg. I don't know if you had like huge FOMO on that, but
Oh yeah, I
all the podcast world right now is everyone's talking about their Childerberg experience, and I'm like, I don't know if I should have been there or it's good that I wasn't.
last year I moved right before they had it,
Mm,
and even if I still lived there, I still would have missed it because
yeah,
I was up here in a wedding, so I would have been up in Iowa anyways.
it was supposed to be our my wedding.
That's right. That's what you said
Yeah,
last time.
yeah. It was supposed to be my wedding, and then this year, yeah. But otherwise, things are good. How about you?
Good. I had a really good Memorial Day weekend. We went up. We went up to northern Minnesota where my parents are, and both my brothers were there, and my soon-to-be sister-in-law. So,
What are your what's your thinking? How do you feel about Memorial Day?
well, I'm glad you asked. I believe so. It started back after World War One, right? I'm pretty sure.
Actually, Veterans Day started. Yeah, Memorial Day actually started during the Civil War. Um,
Okay,
Oddly enough,
okay.
Veterans Day was a World War one, but yeah.
And I think they changed it. It's been a long
Mhm.
time. There was an article on Lou Rockwell. Um, anyways, that doesn't matter at all. Uh,
Yeah. When it
uh,
started, isn't yeah
right.
what
There
it
was
is
a point
today.
to it, but I don't remember it enough. So,
Mm,
but I think that we should try to get everybody to rethink how we view it,
hmm
and instead of just honoring everybody, which isn't a bad thing. That's not what I'm saying,
Yeah.
but uh, we should take the time to figure out why all these people are dying in these pointless wars to begin with.
hmm
Instead of just, oh, my team, they died for a good cause. It should be more looked at like, why are these fucking politicians still sending us to die overseas?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it'd be nice for people to start looking at it that way a little bit and stop giving us reasons to remember people who have died.
Yeah. It's actually for me. It's one that like has really evolved and changed around a lot. Like, as a younger person, it was always like rah rah. Both the holidays are like and Fourth of July. It's all rolled into one kind of. I didn't see the difference between any of them.
Mm-hmm.
And then um for a while, even when I was like questioning the wars for me, I really thought it would make me think about. I was very particular. I was one of those that was like, there's Memorial Day and there's Veterans Day, and don't thank me for my service. I got very specific, and it was very much for me like personal because I really only had one friend that got killed. I had other guys that I knew some guys that got killed, but only one friend got killed like on a deployment.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very much, and for a long time I was never a Lincoln lover. But he did have a way with words, and like Gettysburg Address where he said like we have to take we have to take more devotion from that cause for which they gave their last full measure of devotion. Like I was like, okay, well, I guess we have to win this war now because my friend died in it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. Because
Uh
if you quit, then they died for nothing.
yeah. And so like I kind of went down that road for a while, like, okay, well, we have to just figure out a way to win. Um and I was really particular about like veteran. I didn't want people thanking me for my service. I'd give them a lecture if they did on Memorial Day. It's like Veterans Days for me, Memorial Days for other people. And if you don't know that, you're part of the problem. Kind of, I was a dick, you know. Maybe not like directly to people's faces very often, but just kind of I would pronounce it before anyone got a chance to step in it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think
now,
a lot of
like,
vets go through that.
yeah, I think that's. I mean, I'm making it sound like I was probably worse than I was, except online. I was probably that insufferable as I still am. But now, like, and then I kind of lately I saw somebody's take that got me thinking differently. Like, okay, so then like for a while when I really, really became anti-war, to me, Memorial Day was like, you know, this is a day to remember all the life wasted, and like, and I sort of evolved into this point, and I won't say it's genuinely felt, but not always as high of a thing to me. Like I do sometimes think about the fact that like one of the things that bothers me, and I was a civil affairs pussy and all that, but you know, sorry, I don't know, but like what's the cost? Like, why don't the civilians count? I remember like ages ago, when I was actually on a deployment, I was watching. It was the day that some girl who had been like a Playboy playmate, who was like a mess and was on reality TV, died of like a drug overdose or something. I don't remember who it was. And it was like wall to wall coverage. I was on a deployment. It was while I was back at one of the Camp Cupcakes, and they had this giant TV on, and I was like, you know, staring at Armed Forces Network / Fox News or whatever. And it was wall to wall coverage of some Playboy playmate I barely ever heard of, OD'd and died in some cheap hotel. And I just remember thinking, like, there's like 1,000 more important things and more tragic things. Like probably 100 people died in some tragedy that I should know about, but all I'm hearing about is this. You know what I mean? I've always had this like a little bit of a thing for that, and so when it came to Memorial Day, I started thinking like, damn, you know, like what about, you know, even in our worst wars, more civilians get killed or screwed over than military. Civilians had nothing to do with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they don't count though. That's not useful. You know what I mean? That's not useful to the war effort.
Plus, it's not on our side.
Yeah.
Even
they're not on. Well, some of them might even damn well been. You know, if we're talking about the Civil War or something like that. I mean, you know.
Yeah.
But
I just meant they're foreigners, so who gives a shit?
Yeah, exactly. Them? Yeah. Most of the time, it's some foreigner. So who gives a damn that, you know, whether they were on our side or not, they died in the war. Well, they're just not even worth remembering whatsoever. And that kind of, I started thinking like we need to have like, well, should Memorial Day incorporate those people, or should there be something else where we consider that aspect of war? And then somebody had a take, and I want to remember who, because you know, give him some credit. But you know, have you ever heard of David Gornowski or whatever? He
I think so.
He's been on some of the other like major podcasts. He's the guy that talks about. He's very much into like basically politics is a system for. He talks about religion a lot. He talks mainly about he talks about how all religions like were this system for like creating, like elevating someone up that you can then blame for all the problems, and then you get rid of them ritualistically in some way. And that's what all religions were about. And he seems to say that like Christianity kind of broke that cycle by elevating up the sacrificial figure, and then like, and make, I'm not even going to try to like do it justice, but it had me, somebody said something about Memorial Day that basically they said Memorial Day is this last time somebody said Memorial Day is the one day a year that everyone can lament and wail over the deaths of the warrior class, or whatever you want to call it, and then they can absolve themselves of their sin. It's like a ritual cleansing. Like if they do this once a year, they don't have to feel bad about it ever. You know?
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
I don't know. I keep evolving what I think about Memorial Day, so I'm not settled on it. But it's
Back to your point where, like, why isn't there anything for the people that have died overseas that weren't us?
mhm.
That will never happen, because if we tried to make that happen, it would force people to question whether what we are doing or what we have done is justified, and people just aren't comfortable asking that question.
Yeah,
And a
absolutely.
lot of reason that is because there's a good percentage of us who know people who've died over there, whether they're, our friends or dads or kids or, just like my neighbor's son, whatever. Like, we all have blood in it to an extent,
Mhm.
and we've been paying for it for so long. And especially just like growing up in public education, it's just pounded into our heads. That's all I ever wanted to do growing up,
Yeah,
is go fight. That was it. Because since I
me
was a
too.
little kid, public education and even church, it was just, this is the best thing that you can do.
I was the same way. It's funny you mentioned. For me, was your father military?
No,
Or anyone in
both
your
my
family?
grandpas were,
Hmm.
and my dad was actually a pastor, and I've talked to him a lot about it. And
Hmm.
before he was, like 9/11 happened, and he was all about it. When I was leaving, he was all about it, and he's turned into a pretty good anarchist himself,
Hmm.
more or less. He follows the Ayn Rand
Hmm.
more so than anybody else, but he's really good on most things now. But back then he was sure we need to go
Yeah,
kill
I think.
everybody. So
I mean, it's really. I mean, to have been one of the handful, and I probably mean handful of people that were against it in real time. You know, the, it most of us were not. It's hard to look back and face it. Like even some really great, like, I mean, Ron Paul voted for the AMF. He had his reservations, but like there was only one congressperson that voted against the Afghanistan war. You know what I mean? And it wasn't Ron Paul.
mm,
You know, um, like even the best out there, there's very few that could have written. What was it, Harry Brown, that wrote some? I remember reading it. I'm not going to be able to like quote it now, but
the
like
the
that
day after
spoke out the
9/11,
day after 9/11
and
and
he
said,
said,
"We,
yeah,
yeah,
basically, what did you think was going to happen?
yeah,
We can't just murder everybody overseas and then be surprised when they hit back.
yeah, exactly."
And everybody was, because nobody knew what was happening over there.
And I don't know what I would have thought if I had seen that then either. You know what I mean?
His
Because
article, or
yeah, his article.
I would have been pissed
Yeah, I
at that point.
I think so. Yeah, I mean, I wasn't. My father, for me, I was talking on another show about this recently, like how I still really can't like get myself past like. So my dad was a DoD fraud investigator, which is funny because and he was Army in Vietnam. And a little bit of time at the NSA because he was a cryptographer, crypto linguist. Um, and somehow like he raised both of us, and I don't really know what he did or what he said. Even though he was very conservative, he raised us. And his father was a government employee. He was a GS, but he worked for NATO as a logistics guy, like pretty much in command of logistics for NATO in the late 70s and 80s.
Jeez.
Um, um, and and I grew up with this idea that like the only way you have to give back to your country, you have to serve, and the only way you can serve people is through the government. Like
Mhm.
for somehow, even as a conservative, he really planted in this like idea in my head that I still struggle with. Like when I try to think of like um, what can I do career wise? Like, well, teacher, or what I mean? Like kind of like what do I, like what do I do that isn't as a state employee is something hard to think of. Like option, if you ask me to list out jobs, half of them would end up being state employee because I can't imagine other things, very many other things. Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Yeah. And
Um,
part of that is like growing up when you're a little kid, or even now,
mm,
everybody's just like, when you say heroes, they mean military, firefighters, cops.
mm,
Now they're pushing medical, like nurses and
yeah.
stuff like that, but they're so ingrained with the government too.
Mm,
And now teachers who are also really ingrained with the government. So
mm,
it's like, who else? They're not the
yeah.
people who work for the state aren't the only ones who do any good, and a
It's
lot of
one
the
of
times
those.
they don't do good.
I mean, I know there's some great stuff out there, but it really is one of those like areas that I think the libertarian world needs to fill, is like trying to cultural. And I think Ayn Rand does this a little bit. You know, that's why a lot of people do fall in love with her. I'm not as much into her. I only watched the movies, and the movies weren't very good. um, but but I do get the idea that, and why some people, I think what probably is her appeal, and what there probably should be more of in the liberty movement, is really elevating the heroic nature. And somebody did a good job of it recently, of like entrepreneurial risk takers and people that like meet human needs every day. You know what I mean? It's so funny that we call it the service industry, and it's literally people meeting another person's needs, and sometimes in desperate situations. You know, your car's broken down on the side of the road, and you've got somewhere to be, and you know everything, and it's not the cops that come help you, it's AAA, it's a public, you know what I mean? That's a service.
Yeah, but they're evil because they take your money.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
you know, they charge you, whereas the government just takes it without you asking them to, and then you're supposed to be thankful for everything they do.
Yeah. I don't know. I think there probably is. That's one of those things where like, how do we fill that void? And I know like a lot of people say you can't like actively try. You can't write. I mean, I don't know what Ayn Rand set out to do, but you can't like write the book that's going to make, or the movie that's going to make people recognize the like heroic nature.
All you can really do is be a good example.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah. So just thinking about Memorial Day, because that was just this, not last weekend, but the weekend before, and that's where we were originally supposed to talk. It's really every year it's something new for me, kind of, you know, because as I think more and I participate more in like the liberty world and all that, like, you know, it's been, I guess, since about 2014 that like I had been saying I was a libertarian since probably 2006 was the first time I probably said I was a libertarian, but I didn't know what the hell a libertarian was. I was real like more like a neocon / conservatarian mongrel that didn't really have any founding whatsoever. And then like, well, the big point for me, I remember, actually, it is true, you know, as much as people give the LP crap, I think they were responsible for creating that like world's smallest like 10 question political quiz, that little grid, you know, that's on like that little diamond, and if you're at the bottom you're libertarian, if you're top you're a Nazi, basically.
Yep.
You know, I took that probably around then. I was like, oh, maybe I'm libertarian, you know, but I didn't really understand. Like somehow that put me, you know, it was kind of, I think it was a professor that gave it to all of us, and they were trying to say that it was biased, and you know what I mean? And it probably is slightly biased the way the questions are phrased. Like it was a simple way to show like, well, if you ask the right questions, you'll get the answers you want, you know? And I took it, and it was like, maybe I am a libertarian. I don't disagree with any of these. So maybe it worked. It was like this nudge effect where if you identify, the idea was that if you identify with something politically, if you just give yourself the name libertarian, you'll eventually become a libertarian. If your parents raise you as a Democrat and tell you you're a Democrat, you'll become a Democrat. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If it's just part of your identity, it'll kind of go forward. But I really didn't understand any of it. And I don't know if that really did set me down this road or not. Because eventually my father bought me a copy of Tom Woods' book, and that led me his politically incorrect guide. And I was just reading it for the history stuff, because I always kind of liked like iconoclastic history, like somebody that said the opposite of what everyone believed. I've always been kind of like, oh, here's this person who said the opposite of everything. That's interesting. You know, what everyone else was thinking was this, whether it was Galileo or whatever, you know, like that's, we do elevate those people. And so like Tom Woods' book that like gave all these counter examples was really interesting to me, but it didn't really lead me to libertarianism exactly, except that I started listening to some lectures he had recorded. He had somewhere along the way recorded like 10 lectures kind of stumping for his book. And I was listening to those. This was like before podcasts were really a thing. But there was this app, the iPhone had iTunes U on it, and they were like just free things. And I like, oh, Tom Woods, you know, I was reading his book, so let me see what these lectures are about. And one of them just like, I can remember I was I was always a reservist in the Marine Corps, but I was like a deployment whore. So I did deployment, you know, home doing college, deployment, home doing college. And then when I finished my fourth deployment, I got a set of orders at Quantico for 3 years. Well, it was a year by year, but they just, as long as the OCO money kept coming, then they kept, you know, renewing it.
Yeah.
And so I'm driving to and from work, and Quantico's a miserable place. It's like a 45-minute drive to and from the gate. Even from like 10 miles away, it takes you 45 minutes to get to work, you know? So as I'm going to and from, I'm listening to these lectures, and one of them, I just remember it just hit like a lightning bolt, because it was like one that he says war is militarism's best friend, or war, but well, it says militarism. Damn, I can't remember the title of it right now. But the idea is basically that I'll get to the link. But it's basically everything about a progressive's best friend is what it must have said, because everything about the military is really progressive. It is the standing army is free college, free food for the poor, and all this, and like the income tax was implemented to pay for the army. You know what I mean? And all the things that conservatives hate, you know, a lot of them, almost all of them, except for Social Security, are like birthed by the military. And I was like, oh shit, like I'm a libertarian now. You know what I mean? Like it just kind of clicked.
So is that when you became anti-war?
Yeah. It was when he kind of made this outline of like, you know, it wasn't all of the shitty things I saw, but then all those fell into line after the fact. So it was, you know, as sad as it is, it wasn't like seeing some of the things that bother me the most now, like killing a civilian. You know what I mean? Me and a buddy, basically, we thought we saw it was an SVB IED, and we shot it up. You know what I mean? And it turned out to just not be a VBAD. But all of like the crummy things and what the things I didn't like about the Marine Corps, I really thought the Marine Corps like did a bad job of COIN, and we were killing innocent people here and there, but we could do it better. And I really thought that COIN could work if we did it right. You know what I mean? That's why I literally would go and be like a tiny piece of the COIN course. Maybe I was a sergeant at the time, so my job mainly was to follow the major around that was like teaching a lecture on the COIN course and like make sure his fucking slide deck was pulled up before. It wasn't like I was like the superstar of it or anything. But when they sent the SFAT teams, the security force assessment teams, they would send me and this major from my unit over to 29 Palms to where they're doing Mojave Viper to bore them to tears for a week.
Yeah, that's a horrible place.
Classes. Yeah. But like I really did believe, like I was a junior COINdanista badge. Like I was like, COIN will work if we just do it right. We could get this right. I've seen bad things, but whatever. And here I am at Quantico, and finally it's like, oh shit, no, none of this can work. And it was actually the conservative argument against the military and like how war enables everything a conservative would oppose that really like clicked. You know what I mean? That like it's in war that you can be like, well, we need to raise this income tax, and then it never goes back. And even your Milton Friedman, like he's the one that implemented the withholding during World War II, because he was the one that came, the economist that was like, well, we have to just withhold their pay because otherwise it's too much work to get them to pay us on time. We weren't getting enough compliance, and you know, even like the economic hero, you know, even like the heroes of the conservative economically just will completely cave to all of everything they value and then stick people with the, you know, and that's where it was like, oh crap. So I still find that argument like really compelling, but since then I've kind of reversed and gone back into, yeah, you know what, and the result is all of these other problems. Like all of the things I thought were okay before, or we were just making mistakes and we could do it better, kind of I realized that like, no, we can't do it better. This is how government does everything. It's not going to do war well, just like it can't do education well, you know?
Right. Do you want to explain COIN really quick?
Oh yeah, sure. So COIN is with counterinsurgency, and the idea was that basically, you know, you might hear winning hearts and minds as part of it, but basically the idea, there was a fellow named David Kilcullen who was like this main proponent. Everyone worshipped him. He was I think a colonel in the Australian Army. One of the only people that like supposedly, and I'd really love to dig back into this, won a counterinsurgency somewhere in Southeast Asia. I want to say Indonesia. Um, but basically trying a group of like kind of eggheady military types. It was all the eggheads of the military that like wanted to read too many books about how it was done in the past and cherry pick ideas from Smedley Butler in Haiti and cherry pick ideas from how somebody in how Kilcullen, like he was an Australian officer. I don't know what the hell they were doing fighting in Indonesia. I don't remember. I can't remember the details right now. But the idea was basically a combination of like killing like the worst of the worst bad guys, bringing the moderate bad guys into the fold, giving them a seat at the table in government, because you and at the same time trying to sap the enemy of like all the reasons that we would piss them off. Like basically step one, like one, not step one, but one, like a few concurrent steps. Number one, try not to do anything that explicitly pisses the people off. Like if we're, maybe quartering soldiers in houses, or maybe taxing them without representation, or maybe searching them without warrant, some things that to me, one of my things that I wanted to do and I never followed through on there. So in short, COIN is all of the ways that we tried to fight in Iraq, Afghanistan after the initial invasions in those wars were all considered COIN in some way or another. But the idea is basically, how do we try to get the people to stop fighting us and support whatever government we've created for them?
Mm-hmm.
Does that about sum it up in your view?
Yeah. And then that leads to shit like supporting Al Qaeda, creating ISIS.
Because you end up doing things like in so we're gonna the Sunnis in Western Iraq feel like they're not getting their say about what will happen in Iraq. So what are we going to do? We're going to pay off what we called it was it the Sunni revival, Sunni awakening, where basically we bought off the top like sheikhs and whatnot in Western Iraq and to get them to give up to supposedly give up Al Qaeda, but then later on that kind of backfired on us because it didn't really bring them into the Iraqi government in any way.
Yeah, we just gave them money and they
bribing them, and when the money dried up, they didn't care it. Like,
Now Scott Horton makes a really good point. Like when you prop up somebody, it's forget what the word is that he uses, but basically, when we're propping somebody up, if we can never leave them, because as soon as we do, the other group, like in Afghanistan, Taliban is a stronger group than the government. So if we don't stay there, then the Taliban is just going to come and wipe everything out. So then they use that as an excuse as, well, we have to stay here until we can get the government good enough to fight off the Taliban.
And what you end up with is these people, whether it's in Vietnam with like Diem, or in Afghanistan with who the hell was the president, Karzai, or wherever you go, they're shrewd enough to know this. They're shrewd enough to know that they really don't have to do a damn thing or lift a finger. That all they have to do is not piss us off and have us like oust them, because they know the less they do, the more we'll do for them, because they know that we have to keep propping them up or we lose. So they can do whatever the hell they want. They can be as inept or corrupt as they want to be, as long as it doesn't get to a point where we're like, DM's got to go. We don't care if there's a coup. You know what I mean?
They just can't get off. They just can't try to get off the dollar.
Yeah, as long as they don't get on our bad side, they can do they can be terrible. And you see that in Afghanistan with these, child rapist warlords that we have on as Afghan police. You know what I mean? The police force is terrible. I mean,
I hate those people, man.
Yeah. I mean,
like we propped up Gaddafi, and then as soon as he tried to get off the dollar, they killed him.
Yeah. So yeah, that's that. The one other thing that got me, I was thinking about this before because it was actually me trying to think of a way to relate COIN to Marines, and it kind of led me down the road of being libertarian, but only so far. And you tell me how you would take this, but I always wanted to create counterinsurgency. Well, two things. I wanted to create a counterinsurgency lesson for like that security force assistance course. This SFAT teams were the guys they would send to like for those who aren't that, they were the guys that would like a small team of guys that would train, that would be not embedded with usually, but usually like check in on the ANP team. Like maybe they might have like, they would be responsible for training and supporting Afghan National Police.
Oh, okay. I had some friends who went before us.
Yeah, it was usually a volunteer thing. So you would get a kind of random hodgepodge of like maybe a comm guy, maybe this random dude who's like a bulk fuels guy, but they could volunteer to be on an SFAT team, and it was a way to get a deployment. And my idea, and I kind of sometimes when I was, I honestly don't know how well it went over, but I would try to. It was while I was in Iraq, my second deployment. We did this thing. A MU commander came in to take over. I was way out west in Rutba, this like little far-flung nothing truck stop town, right? And there was it was like Western Iraq, so basically they had an LAR. I don't even think it was a whole battalion. I think it was only a company or two of LAR. It might have been the whole battalion that was responsible for like everything in like the desert of Iraq. Mainly supposedly for interdiction, to keep stuff from like being smuggled in from Jordan or Syria. And
I was in South Sinjar for a while.
Okay. So. Yeah, so you would have
right on the border of Syria.
Yeah, border of Syria, up by the river, right? Like further up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So like there was that AO West area down below that where it was just like all the way out MSR Mobile, where like Mobile forked is where Rupa was. Mobile forked, and one part went to Syria and one part went to Jordan. Anyways, they had that whole area and they were like barely policing it. And I think part of the thing was they didn't want to bother with this little city. It was 60,000 people, something like that. So they had kind of bermed it off at some point, and then they just had like 3 checkpoints for people coming in and out. And they didn't really go into the city. But then there was a MU coming through the area that got tasked there to like supplement them, and the MU command, so that you have this full bird that comes in and takes over the AO basically. Okay. And he's got all these assets because it's a MU, and they're only there for like 2 months, 3 months of they're like a pit stop. And he's like, well, I mean, in my mind, I was a corporal. I just learned these words. I don't know this is really the way it went down, but in my mind's eye, it was like, this asshole's just here for a combat fit rep. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. He's spoiling for a fight because he's only here temporarily and doesn't care about the long term at all. So like he interpreted the LAR not really. I mean, who knows what the LAR battalion commander told them? But basically, he interpreted this city that they didn't really go into as being like a hostile area that we have to take down. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. We would get at the checkpoint, we would get like shot at once a week, maybe. Like one guy like got shot in the neck, and I got shot at once. At this little checkpoint, but I could just imagine that being like anything, just somebody annoyed at dealing with us. So, but this MU commander comes in and he's like, we're taking down the entire city. You know what I mean? We're going to search every freaking house. We're going to clear out this. We're going to, so we do this, like, it wasn't that many houses, and we had a whole MU. So it took 4 days to like search every house in the city. And during the whole thing, I noticed a few things that first of all, when we were at the little checkpoints around the city, because as the civil affairs guy, they would just tell us to like talk to the people and figure out what they're doing and where they're going. And we had an interpreter. That's the main reason they wanted us there, was just they would have an interpreter, because we had a terp and they didn't. They didn't have enough. They didn't have enough terps, and the one terp they had was always bitching about being overworked. The platoon that was at that little outpost. So like having the civil affairs guy doubles the number of terps they have and makes their lives a little easier, Yeah. So we would just go out and bullshit while they were searching people's cars. And naturally the people were annoyed. Like, why the fuck can't we just come and go from our own city as we please? Why do we have to wait for you assholes to search our cars top to bottom? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And so I could figure that, that's enough reason alone. Like if I had to go every time I wanted to leave my little town, had to go through top to bottom search, get my balls cupped by some 18-year-old Marine who's being a jerk to me in another language. Right. You know what I mean? I might. take exception to that, you know,
Mhm.
and like there was one occasion this guy was bringing some shepherds in or some sheep. He was a he was bringing some sheep in, um, to be butchered in the city and sell them. You know what I mean? And one of the sheep like panicked as it was being searched and it ran out and kind of got caught in the barbed wire and got cut up. And then some dogs like started chasing some wild dogs that were feral dogs that were around started chasing it. And then all the Marines took it as a chance to be like, blood sport. Let's all start shooting. Let's shoot the dogs. Let's shoot the sheep. Let's shoot everything. Like just,
Jeez.
you know, well, you know, we're trying to help by shooting the dogs. And then it was and then the sheep had been mauled. So it was like, let's just shoot the sheep too. And the guys sitting there like, well, who the fuck's going to pay me for my sheep? Like this wouldn't have happened if I could just come and go as I pleased. You know what I mean?
And he probably didn't care about the money as much as like, fuck you guys.
Yeah.
Like, can you imagine if some other like country came and set up a wall around your town and then started being a dick to you every day?
Yeah. You know what I mean? So
you have to get my permission to come and go from your own home.
And then
we wonder why people hate us.
Yeah. And then because it was walled off, we were like, well, we have to search. This MEU commander came in and was like, we're going to search everything. We're going to get this insurgent cell that's here. And there was some insurgent there. I don't think the word insurgent is the worst word in the world, to be honest. The American revolutionaries were fucking insurgents. You know?
And he probably was just an insurgent because he hated you guys.
Yeah.
Which, to be fair, that was fair. You know? Like,
you
know?
how
many Al-Qaeda guys were there when we went in? 400? And now they're doing better than ever? And like, where do you think these people come from? It's because we go and murder their kids and shit like that, you know, destroy their homes. And then what would you do?
I had to tell you another funny story too, as fast as I get. But like during that operation, so we stayed and we always picked the tallest house, like the house with the longest lines of sight that was like kind of had a good standoff, had like a yard in the city. It's like, who do you think owns that house?
The richest person.
Probably the richest person in town. And that's the one we're going to stay in for the night. And we're going to we would force the family to stay in their bathroom. So we didn't have to deal with them taking bathroom breaks. Like, you all just go into your bathroom. We're going to lock you in here overnight. And not let you out until we leave. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like that was, and then like, you know, I realized it then too. Like, I love my buddies from the Marine Corps. I don't think I'd have all 13 of them stay in my house ever, especially after a field op. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So imagine you're this rich person and there's MRE trash everywhere. We've sandbagged your windows. We've smashed out all the glass. We've cut little spy holes in your roof, you know, all that crap. You're like, you know, I can imagine. And it got me thinking then, and I don't know what exactly clicked, but I was like, this is the Bill of Rights. This is the Third Amendment, no quartering of troops in houses. This is the Fourth Amendment. No search without warrant or probable cause. You know what I mean? This is the Fifth Amendment. No, not forcing someone to testify. If you don't answer our questions, we're not going to let you leave your city. You know what I mean? This is the right to bear arms. It's, you know, all of those things are right there in like the first few of the Bill of Rights. And I realized like it was something during my second deployment. It was like the Bill of Rights is a counterinsurgency, is an insurgent's list of things that made them go from we don't like you to we'll fucking kill you. You know what I mean? It was like 1, 2, 3. You screwed with our churches. You said we couldn't meet there anymore because we were having secret meetings there also. Yes, we were guilty. Screw you. We don't care. You know what I mean? We can't speak. We can't. You're trying to limit our. You know you're trying to the powder alarms, where the British tried to confiscate gunpowder from villages so they couldn't defend themselves. You know, Second Amendment, Third Amendment, staying in people's houses. Fourth Amendment, all of these unlawful searches. You know, Fifth Amendment, forced testimony. All of it was things the British did to us. If you compare it to the Declaration of Independence, it's like bang, bang, bang. These are the things that we never want our government to be allowed to do, because if the government does, people will start shooting again because they're violations of really important rights. And I started thinking about Iraq, and it kind of crystallized over time. And funny story, when my last deployment in Afghanistan.
Before you tell that story.
Yeah.
And just, you can almost make an argument that the British, at least in their eyes, had claim to America.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And,
yeah.
And Iraq never did anything to us, and we just went and said, fuck you. with, you know, there's no
Yeah.
argument to make a claim that we had any moral or justified reason for being there.
Yeah, exactly. And still, like, we did all of these things that, like, I'm sorry, like, there was a list of things. I only ever, like, occasionally tried to spiel on Marines while I was, like, on my third deployment. I tried it once with, like, a grunt platoon that was the company I was with kind of had this. It was subtle but interesting. Well, they were in Nawa, which is just south of Lashkar Gah, and they tried to, like, mix up their strategies by having one platoon only ever patrol like overland, like going through fields, through a creek, sticking to the wood line, trying to, like, be discreet. One that, like, kind of only patrolled on the roads with like satellites or like canal roads, and the other one, I forget what they did, but they kind of had this kind of mix up, and they would send one platoon one out one day, one the other day, and one would be on the guard force. And the group that was on the roads would any vehicle that approached, there were these canals. I don't know if you've seen them. Like, there were these canals, and on either side there was, like, a little path. You know what I mean? Usually, and every now and then there'd be, like, a little, like, bundle of sticks with some mud on top of it that somebody could cross over to the other side of the canal from. You know, and they were convinced that, like, well, we've got it. We're interdicting. We're going to stop any vehicle that approaches us. We can't just let it, like, drive through our patrol. So we've got to stop and search them. You know what I mean? Anyone who's, like, coming down the road, we've got to stop and search them. And I was the one that was like, and you know how the canal where we were, it was, like, kind of the dike around it was elevated. It was a good few meters up above, like, the surrounding terrain. The water was below, but, you know, they built up, basically, you know, there had been a creek there or whatever, and they built up this berm on either side of it to control where it went. And I was like, dudes, like, you're silhouetted up here. You're stopping, you're making this predictable TTP of every time somebody approaches you, you stop and you're silhouetted while you search them. And you're never finding anything. And anyone that's a bad dude would just be able to see us from a mile away and cross over to the other side, either turn around before they get to us or cross to the other side of the canal and go past us, and nobody would stop them. All they would have to do is, you know, every few hundred meters, there was some little bridge they could cross over.
Yeah.
You know, and so they could see us coming. If they had anything that we were going to find, they would just go to the other side of the canal and just wave at us from the other side and laugh. You know what I mean? So the only thing that you're doing here is either exposing yourself to an ambush by being silhouetted, you know what I mean, and putting, you know, you got one Marine searching and one doing overwatch of the guy, and then you got the whole patrol stopped.
Right.
Or so you're either setting us up for an ambush, or you're unwarrantedly searching someone who probably is doing you no harm. You have no cause to search them other than the fact they're near you. You know what I mean? And I try to give them, like, kind of this spiel, like, you know, people have a right to be secure in their persons. And they're like, the fuck are you talking about? You know what I mean?
Right. Like these aren't people. What do you mean?
Yeah, it didn't really work. I was sure that I had an idea there, but I don't know if you got to get it in before, you know what I mean? You know, once they're there and that's what they're doing, they're not going to just be like, you know, hey, LT.
Right.
This and random fucking civil affairs asshole.
And the guys that go over there are generally, you know, wanting to go to war a lot of the time.
Yeah.
At least that's what I wanted, you know?
Yeah.
So I didn't give a fuck searching people.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do have to go pretty soon, but I want to ask you something before I get out of here. So you're doing the Why I'm Anti-War podcast.
Yep.
So, and we've talked about why you are anti-war, but why do you care about it so much to try to change it or to get other people on board with being anti-war?
You know, I think my thinking is, and there are people that legitimately have other reasons to believe this or to prioritize other things. But my thinking is basically that I believe that from pretty much any perspective, whether you're a green environmentalist, a progressive, Black Lives Matter, hardcore ANCAP, conservative, I think every single perspective people recognize on some, like, the war is the worst thing that our government does. You know what I mean? Whether it's because they're polluting too much, whether they're, you know what I mean, or they're blowing up the Na'vi and friggin' what's that stupid environmentalist knockoff of Dances with Wolves, whatever it is. You know what I mean? Or it's the worst thing that our government is doing. And for me as a libertarian, not only have I lived it and seen so many things that we do that are wrong and are callous and not really caring about the people, and we're not helping them, but it is making life in our own country worse. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It enables, like, the drones that were developed for war are flying over the borders today, and they'll be over the cities tomorrow. You know what I mean? They will be, and soon enough they'll have some kinetic weapon that they'll use against a civilian. I'm willing to bet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That they'll use the minimally lethal weapons from a drone to stop a car on the highway, and who cares if the driver gets killed because he was a bad guy anyways. You know, those things are all tested overseas on somebody else. All the violations of rights that we deplore, like, are tested in a war and then brought home every time. And that's why, like, war is the most important issue to a libertarian. But if you listen to me, I think I can make the argument that no matter who you are, war should be the number one issue for you.
Yeah. It's not hard. You know, it's like, how many of us die over there? How many people do we kill over there? How many of us come home and kill ourselves? How many broken families, fucked up kids, like children, because dad comes home all messed up in the head? You know, I could go on and on. The police state over here, our debt, you know, making enemies everywhere we go.
Yeah,
it is. It's the most fucked up thing.
I mean, there's just a million. It's almost too hard for me to name one, you know,
because there's so many.
I hope that was a good answer. But
no, it was a really good answer. So
yeah, it's ridiculous. It just, but ultimately, yeah, I think part of the thing to me now, in retrospect, what kind of drives me the most, if I do have to say it, what drives me, like, my libertarianism definitely bolsters it and gives me a lot of reasons. But now, and again, this is kind of where it came back around, where, like, I didn't care about that person that I killed and that father. So basically it was 3 people in a car. One got killed. The youngest, I think it was one of the sons, got killed. The other one got a bullet through the arm, and the father got a bullet through the belly. And we destroyed their car. Never saw anything of them again. They got carted off to the hospital at Fallujah and were probably taken care of for a little while, but this is 20 years later. You know what I mean? And I just think about that family that we, like, if we didn't destroy it, then they were probably one of the best and tightest families in history, because they've gone through that and be intact still at, 20 years later now. Would be incredible. But I think about that family and what I did to them just because I was put in a place that I didn't belong. I should never have been in Iraq to do that to them in the first place. I blamed myself for a while. Me too. And so what kind of drives me now is, like, this is my way to make amends, to make people know that, like, this is what happens when a well-meaning, I mean, I meant the best. I wanted to help everyone. I wanted to save I love the idea of, civil affairs, we're going to help people. We're going to rebuild this country. Hell yeah. Like, I wanted nothing but to be that, like, I wasn't a liberal, but the neoconservative, we're going to rebuild the world in our image, or the progressive liberal imperialist who's going to make the world better and follow our model. I wanted nothing but to do that at the time. Nothing but the best of intentions, and I end up just destroying way more than I ever repaired. And so you can go in with the best of those intentions, and they just won't work out that way.
Right.
So
I feel the same way.
That's what drives it now. That's what I'm like every day, every time I'm like, should I keep doing the podcast or whatever? It's like, no, until this stuff until these are over, until all the wars are over, like, your job isn't done. You know?
And it's on us. It's on us to stop it, because if we don't, then our kids are going to go through the same shit that we are.
Yeah. Literally.
Yeah. if not worse, So you have a project with your buddy,
Scott
Horton's
Jordan.
book. Yeah. Fuck, what's the name of it?
enough already. Time
There you
to end
go.
the war.
I have it right here, and my other book is blocking it. I am gonna buy it. I told you last time I was gonna buy it. I'm trying to send a copy to my buddy. He said he wanted it and hasn't given me an address. So, so I'm just waiting for that before I send it. And then after I buy one for a really good price, you guys are sending one to.
Yeah. So the cheapest price you can get on the internet is $12 for Scott Horton's book. It's $12 right now because they've had some donors give cash, and then the book's got and what we're doing is named on Twitter, he's Op Libertas. It's Jordan and a bunch of other people. We kind of have a little network. Some guys that are still on active duty, some contractors that are working overseas right now. We give them the books, and then we kind of cultivate somebody that wants a copy. So like
somebody who's open to the message, so you're not just wasting
somebody that might be open to it. So you could buy a book for $12, and then a second copy of the book is going to get into the hands of somebody who we think will read it, who is in the military right now, whose mind we're hoping we can change. And that's at operationlibertas.com/shop. So that's a little project. And then my only other kind of upcoming project, and I actually need to talk to Adam Kokesh because he's talking about a similar idea. Him and I are weirdly on like just off from each other wavelengths because I just heard him talking about wanting to start a publishing project where I'll publish people's stories. And you and I talked last time, on Joshua Smith's Break the Cycle podcast. He talked about like he's an idea man, kind of like me too. I think that's why is like he's more of a doer. He's to date more of a doer than I am, but I'm getting there. Because he's putting together like this retreat for veterans where you can go to kind of unwind or and sort of talk to like-minded people. He's building it on his own property, but one of the other things he mentioned was he wants to start publishing people's stories, and that he's kind of written a book of his own. What I want to do is compile other people's stories. So if you're out there and you're listening and you have some story, anything that makes you kind of think anti-war, I'm already compiling them in podcast form and interviews, but I want to get like people to write down whether it's you and something that you did overseas or you saw overseas, or whether it's you were married to someone, or you lost it and you're divorced and you ended up having a broken family because war broke your family, whatever it is. Or if you're listening to this from Afghanistan right now and something we did to you over there affected you, I want your story, and I want to put them all together into a book. Like I want everyone to write down. I'm not there yet, but I'm going to try to figure out some authors that can maybe kind of do some like workshops where like, hey, I'll talk about how I wrote my story, and then you can submit your stories to me and I'll take a look at them and polish them together, and we will trade stories with each other and tell you where you can make it better. But that's my my next big project after the Why I'm Anti-War podcast is the Why I'm Anti-War book, basically of 1,000 different people for 1,000 different reasons, telling their reasons for being against war.
Yeah, that's awesome. I got some names for you, actually. I reached out to some people, and hopefully I can get more by the time you're actually putting it together.
You could just dig through your letters from home too. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what I'm doing here, like whatever, and give me that, like the primary source of just like, I don't know what I'm doing here. I just want to be home. I don't, I don't want to play anymore from overseas. If you still have those buried somewhere,
Dude, so I'm doing a bunch of VA shit right now.
Yeah.
And I was going through all my papers and I found a letter from a kid that I didn't know, just some random school kid that sent us shit. And it was a drawing. I think I took a picture of it.
They're so ridiculous.
Dude, this one's great. Oh, I got it right here. I don't know if you can see that.
Have a good time and try to.
I think it says try to win.
Try to win.
Yeah, try to win. Thanks. And then it's just stick figures shooting each other.
Like the things the kids do. We had, and you pin them up to the wall. These ridiculous ones where they had like, I remember one of like a helicopter machine gunning a crowd of people, and there weren't really guns in the crowd. It could have been all bad guys in the kids' eyes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like,
sure. I'm sure he doesn't think of
having that drawing like pinned up to our wall because little kids. And what second grade teacher is not looking at me like, oh, this kid, like what second grade teacher looks at this picture of like a helicopter machine gunning a crowd of people and is like, you know what we should do? Send those to the troop boys overseas. That'll really make them feel proud of what they're doing. You know what I mean?
you can't draw a gun in school unless it's for shit like
Unless
that.
yeah. But that's honestly, I had some reservations when I saw some of those. That would be fine. If you have one of those in your box and I can put it in there and be like, this is what war does to our children in our country, is make them think that this is good.
Because we got to support the troops. But
Yeah.
I got to get out of here, man.
Yeah, man.
My son's baseball game started a few minutes ago.
Oh, I'm sorry, dude.
No, you're good.
That's more
You're good.
important than this, man. But cool. Thanks
for
talking to me.
Where can people find you on Twitter?
If you want sometimes entirely too spicy and ridiculous libertarian takes, at MDVet4 on Twitter. Maryland Veteran for Peace. And if you want just the Why I'm Anti-War podcast, it's at Anti-War Podcast. That's going to be more just sticking on message.
I wonder if I don't know if I follow that one. I think I do. I think I got both of them.
It doesn't matter. Like I said, sometimes I talk out my ass.
I'm never on Twitter anyways, really. So, but it was great talking to you, man. I'm sure we'll talk again soon.
Always.
So thank you.
Take it easy, buddy.
You too.
Bye.